Okay, it is 5:14. We're supposed to adjourn at 5:30. We're trying to get some contact with the restaurant to see if we have to be there, for a dinner reservation at 6, or I don't know if when we were doing the arrangements for this, we get the whole restaurant. In times past, we've gotten the whole restaurant. There weren't necessarily other people in the restaurant, so I'm going to see if they may be able to accommodate a slightly later dinner time. But in the meantime, let's use the time we have. And I think we are back to the evaluation issue for our executive director. And I honestly don't know where we left off, so a little help from everybody would be appreciated. Governor Boyd has her hand up, though.
Thank you. I think when we left off, there were actually two people in front of me. If those people remember who they are, I'm happy to let them go and then I can go third. But if they don't remember, I could just start with my comments.
And I've just been told that we can move our dinner reservation to 6:30, so we'll get more European with our dining. Does anybody have a hand up that they think they had a hand up before Governor Boyd? Well, Governor Boyd, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I have, three topics on this, or three comments, I guess, on this topic. The first is I attended a lot of the personnel committee meetings. And I just for the record, my position is that everything that we're discussing now was discussed at personnel. I don't think that it is accurate that had these issues just been raised at personnel, they could have been dealt with effectively there because they were raised at personnel. But more importantly, I want to talk about the substance of the issue. It seems to me that anonymity from the board on the evaluations is not necessary. The board is the executive director's boss. I think that the bosses should be able to be non-anonymous, should be able to give our positions. I do agree that I would like the ability to evaluate the statements that the board makes on the evaluations based on who makes that statement. I think that's a critical piece of information. I also I disagree that board members have anything redacted, including names of who gave the information, at least when it comes to other board members. Now, when it comes to the executive staff, I think it's a good point that our HR director has brought up to us, that best practice is that they're anonymous. I have no problem with the executive staff submitting anonymous responses to the evaluation. So I would pitch a two-prong approach, that the board evaluations be not anonymous and have our names on them, but that the executive staff evaluations be anonymous. I think even if they were all anonymous, we could probably distinguish the difference between a board evaluation and a staff evaluation anyway. So we're not like narrowing down the playing field at all to tell the difference. So I would be in support of sort of a two-prong approach. I would not be in support of a fully anonymous evaluation. Regarding the substance of the evaluation, which we haven't gotten to at this point, but I think we should discuss, I have some concerns about the self-evaluation that we're asking the executive director to fill out. To me, it's not particularly helpful. It's not going to be particularly helpful for me when I'm evaluating how the executive director evaluates her own performance. I'm not sure that just going down with the job duties will get us the information that we want to know. I would think that we'd want to know information more like, what does the executive director think that she does well? What does she think she can improve on? What are some of the ways that she has been an effective leader? These are more open-ended questions that I think we will get better answers from if we asked questions more like that. I would think that a lot of the answers are going to be tied to the job duty description anyway, because that's what we're asking her to evaluate. But these questions they appear to me to be not helpful, quite overlapping with each other, and really time consuming. Particularly, I mean, a lot of these questions, I'm not sure that I'm going to necessarily need the answer to, but particularly, and I had it up, there's a question about something like how many committees and board meetings the executive directors attended over the past year. That's a lot of information. That's going to take a lot of time for the executive director to look up, I would assume, when I would prefer that she was doing other things with her time leading the organization. And I'm not sure if the answer to that has any bearings on our thoughts of her job performance. So those were just my thoughts. And then I know that it kind of got brought up, and I don't want to open this topic, but I do want to make it very clear that my understanding of this evaluation is to provide feedback, whether that's constructive criticism or constructive positive feedback. I hope a little bit of both, but it's not to evaluate whether we're going to somehow extend a contract or extend employment. Thank you.
Anybody else have their hand up? I haven't seen, was there a motion of any nature whatsoever on this yet? Oh, Governor Williams-Ruth, do you have your hand up? I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was just going to say that I concur with what Governor Boyd was saying, and would, if it is appropriate, if they're looking for a motion, I would make a motion to that effect. But I also, I want to come back and just talk about the fact that if we're going to be using the former Chief Justice Alexander, that would need to be part, at least my understanding of it, is that would need to be part of the motion in that that gets set forward. So, and I don't know, this is a monster of a topic, and so I don't know if this would be actually more appropriate for a one issue at a time motion to just, get board feelings, because maybe there's 9 people would support this, but only 5 people like that, or whatever, rather than trying to do one big conglomerate motion. So I will yield back to you, Mr. President, and look for further instruction, just because I think that, I know that I have different views on a variety of what was presented this afternoon.
Governor President-elect Clark. Oh, it's in the chat, sorry. Okay, Governor President-elect Dan Clark says, I'd like to respond to Governor Boyd's comments. We've heard from the HR director that a best practice is to have all be anonymous, and that is the industry standard in doing evaluations. There is clear history in 2020 that some governors were attacked when the anonymous nature of the evaluations came through. Putting names on evaluations opens the WSBA and volunteers open to retaliation and a hostile volunteer environment, which creates liability for the entity. Okay, we got a lot of hands up now. This is great. Let's start with our Human Resource Director, Kleinfelder CEO.
Thank you. I'd like to address Governor Adewale's question that he posed in the chat earlier about using HR firms and an estimated cost. So we could certainly work with HR consultants to do this. and the cost would be based on the scope of the work. For example, would they be developing the questionnaire for us? What kind of reports would they compile at the end of it? Would there be a presentation? Would there be some sort of follow-up or consultation, post-evaluation, et cetera? Roughly, I think this type of service would start at about $5,000. Another option to consider if we're going to talk about the mechanics of it, since I'm not going to dive into the actual process or execution of it, is to consider perhaps using software. So I did that at a previous organization. I worked with the board when they evaluated their CEO, and it was something similar to SurveyMonkey. I think it was called Alchemist, but it was a software that you could use. It was like a survey-based software. You could purchase a subscription. I think it was less than $500, and you could upload your existing questionnaires into it. You could protect anonymity, or you could require or make it optional if that's the direction the board chooses to go. The system will track who has responded, who hasn't responded, and will continue to ping them, and will generate reports from both the quantitative and the qualitative data. So there is minimal fiscal impact, and the amount of human labor is also very minimal. And if we go that route, you could always assign maybe like someone from staff and someone from board to be the two administrators so that there are checks and balances there. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Adewale.
Thank you, HR Director. I'm so grateful for helping me to answer that question. First of all, I want us to get it out of the way. Definitely, no professional organization would recommend that you do this by any other way other than being anonymous. So it has to be anonymous. And if we need to vote on that, I'm willing for us to take that vote right now. And I'm sure that given all that we have had so far, it's important that that should be anonymous. Number two, I'm not giving what the General Counsel stated with regards to questions about the involvement of our former CJ and whether it's by the firm, by the whole firm, or whether it's by him in person, how much it's going to cost and what is involved and what are the ramifications of all that relationship. I don't think that it's fair to vote without information. I don't think we should vote on that issue, on who should be appointed to do this process. I'm also interested in the HR going out and finding out, because if the law firm of the CJ come up with their bid, I want us to be able to have an opportunity to have other HR firm provide their own bid, and professional organization that can do this work for us also be able to have something to review, to compare with before we make a decision. Nothing against the CJ, I absolutely adore him, but let's make a very rational decisions based on information. So the only vote I think I'm willing to take today is the vote that every one of this interview process or a review should be anonymous. Other than that, who should do the job? I think we need more information. Thank you.
Governor Williams-Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm sure Governor Adewale didn't mean to imply that if you have an association or work with other professions where they're not anonymous, that there's something wrong with that process. Because in my last firm that I worked for, the people who were above me knew the comments of each other. And so when they gave me the comments from the partnership, I was able to know exactly which partners had issues with whatever part of my performance they were looking at, which actually made it conducive to be able to know where to correct, because each of the different partners that was providing an evaluation had different things to say. And I wanted to ask Director Kleinfelter-Ceo to expand on her comments, because President-elect Clark has said that I believe that he has given her statement that beyond what she said, because she specifically talked about the people who, for retaliation. And that's where, again, I agree with Governor Boyd in that anyone that's a direct report to, or even not a direct report, anyone that's down the organizational chart from Director Nevitt should have the ability to give comments without any fear of retaliation. However, we are not down the organizational chart. We are above her on the organizational chart. And I believe that it would be good management for her to have feedback, considering that she does not have one boss, but yet 14 or however many of us there are, that it's important to know where the comments are coming from and be able to take them as they are. And so I would really like to hear from, if that's the industry standard that you've experienced and your knowledge and history in the world of HR, that maybe I just worked for a really shitty firm and they just, hung out the partners to dry. I don't know. I appreciated knowing where the comments came from, but I would like to hear directly from you about what's the norm when it's the bosses giving feedback down, not the executive staff giving feedback up. Thank you.
How about that, Human Resources Director?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
So to answer your question, in general, industry standard is that evaluations are anonymous. You do a 360 or you poll your entire department and you get general feedback. Industry standard is that it is confidential. In previous evaluations of CEOs by boards that I've been a part of, there was an option to self-disclose your identity if you wanted to, but it was not required. And I'm just speaking industry standard and what I've experienced. That doesn't mean that it's my recommendation or that this is the direction the board needs to go in. You do have a good point in that if you think of, if I were to get evaluated by my supervisor, that's not anonymous. I know exactly who is supervising me and who exactly is evaluating me and what they are saying. So to your point, I can see why you would want to disclose identities, but I was just speaking in general about the standard.
I believe Governor Pertzer's up next.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Glennis. A couple of comments and thoughts. One is that if we want to do something that is governed by industry standards, and that's what we should do. And that's one aspect. The other is that, this has been something that's been worked on for months, and we're no closer now in putting together a survey than we were when we first started. So perhaps it makes some sense to have an outside agency prepare the evaluation for a couple of reasons. One is that we have someone that has some professional expertise to do this, which I think would be beneficial, and as opposed to the folks that are on the personnel committee that devises a potential evaluation, then to be pulled apart and picked apart and rejected by the full board. I don't think that's particularly productive use of time. The other part is that if we have a set evaluation, and whether it's anonymous or you can self-report or disclose regarding your comments, that's kind of a side issue. But I think we should have something that's repeatable year after year. So it's something you can have compare apples to apples. Because if we keep developing, or the next board keeps developing their own evaluations, it's pretty much meaningless if you don't have some constancy with respect to what we're doing. So, one of the things that becomes a little bit frustrating is that we get into these rabbit holes and thinking that we are brilliant about areas that we really don't have much expertise about. And it really makes some sense on a cost benefit analysis to spend some money to get it done right. And because we've wasted, we have used hours today on things that should have been done some time ago. And let's just do it right and quit messing around and thinking that we're more brilliant than we are, and take some guidance from the people that we rely on. We have a wonderful HR director. She's told us what the industry standard is. We may not like what she's told us, but we're asking her opinion. She provided it. Let's follow it. Let's get this thing done right and to move on. There's other aspects that the membership and the public want to hear about to get done, and we shouldn't get bogged down on this. It's pardon the pun, but the bog is bogging down in this particular area. So take it for what it's worth, but I think that might make some sense going forward.
Thank you, Governor Pertzer. Past President Shichetti.
So I've been involved in many nonprofit organizations over the years, and all of our evaluations of the executive director, at least, have been consistently open and not anonymous, because it's usually a discussion, contemplation. It's talking about different viewpoints, and everybody knows where these viewpoints are coming from. I think nonprofits and executive directors are a different standard. And I tried to do some research on what the standard is for anonymous and not anonymous. And if you go through and look that stuff up, do a little research, there's all sorts of different opinions about that. And one of the opinions is, well, it can be anonymous if you want it to be more genuine, but I don't know that that's necessarily the case here. You know, we can talk. We talk a lot. as Governor Pertzer says, we've wasted a lot of time or spent a lot of time on this, talking about these things. We're not afraid to speak up. And we should be able to talk and know what the perspective of all of our colleagues are, openly and transparently. We talk about transparency all the time. I don't know that we actually exercise it very well, but all of my involvement in the very good boards I've had the pleasure of serving on, very good boards, and some boards that were dysfunctional. The ones that were very good were open. They were constructive. They weren't offering evaluations in order to get the executive director. We wanted these organizations to thrive. We wanted these organizations to be the best that they could. If there was a concern that we had, it would be articulated very constructively and saying, well, maybe we need to look into doing something else. We're doing this over here. They weren't ever meant to harm. And I think that's where we go wrong. It's the same thing with the evaluations of these meetings that we used to do. It wasn't an honest evaluation. It was meant to harm people. And that's what I'd want to stay away from. So those are my 2 cents.
Governor Abell, followed by Governor Couch.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. I think ultimately a lot of the comments I was going to make have already been made. I would generally echo the comments from Governors Adewale and Pertzer. I would also thank Governor Pertzer for using the phrase bogged down. I don't know how I made it my 3rd year of service without thinking about that. Something being bogged down, that is kind of funny. So a little bit of levity later in the evening on our first day. Thank you.
Governor Couch.
As much as I am a fan of transparency, I also in our office, we have a belief that when we do surveys, we want to get people's honest feedback and not try to pick out who it is, but actually treat it all as a systemic issue or the potential one. With that in mind, I may need a little help on this, but I'm going to move to adopt Governor Pertzer's suggestion, and that we, for this evaluation, we have an outside company develop an evaluation system for us that we can put in place. I believe and I'm going to take my guess, someone correct me if I'm wrong, the avenue for this is best to have the personnel committee select an outside company to do this for approval. Or is this a staff thing that the staff can just do? Director Kleinfelder, is this something that you are capable of doing? You can nod, and I'll correct my motion as you nod or not. Okay. I'm going to make the recommendation. I'm going to recommend that the board has the staff reach out to a company qualified to do this in HR to develop an evaluation system for us. That is my motion. Thanks.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I'm going to have the executive director restate it to make sure that just so we're all clear on what is being voted on, and then we've got some more hands up.
Okay, I'll try. You can help me because it kind of went like that. But Governor Couch moved to direct WSBA staff to reach out to a professional HR company to design and execute evaluation. This design.
I guess, I mean, they would give it to us and it's something that we would be able to execute. Like we have to do the feedback so they can execute it themselves. But yeah, to give us a system that we can use.
Okay. So Governor Couch moved to direct WSBA staff to reach out to a professional HR company to design an evaluation for our use.
On the record, that is correct.
Governor Higginson.
First of all, I think it was just in chat from Governor Williams Ruth. We're not supposed to, I believe we have a policy that we're not supposed to be just willy-nilly tossing out policy or motions that require expenditure of funds without having money information in advance. So I think this could be a bit of a premature motion without having a little bit of information about what it might cost. And I also think that we need to consider, are we asking the company to develop a questionnaire, and wouldn't we need to give them some information about what it is we're asking them to do? I'm assuming that most HR companies would not be terribly familiar with the WSBA or the process or the job description, et cetera, et cetera. So it seems like we are getting the cart before the horse here. I'm sorry that my colleagues did not like the work that the personnel committee did after hours of a number of hours of meetings and whatnot. But be that as it may, if you want to go a different direction and have somebody else develop a questionnaire, I guess that's fine. But it seems to me that before we would consider this further, we need a fiscal impact, and we need to know, are we telling them what we want them to do, or are we just asking them to tell us, gee, this is generally how we would do it, and so forth. So that's my comment. I don't really care what you do, honestly, but I just think we got to be mindful of the money that we're going to be spending on behalf of our members.
Thank you, Governor Higginson. Governor Dresden.
Thank you, President Tolson. Before I do have some comments, but I wanted to let Governor Couch respond to what was in the comments.
Couch.
If he wanted to.
If someone can, you mean the comments that are written chat? I was not following the chat. Sorry.
It is the question about whether you want to request the HR to present RFPs, to have outside agencies provide RFP that we can evaluate and decide on.
I see that. I will gladly amend or restate to say that we would have staff get us an RFP on this, since that is our process when something involves financial teams on this, and then hopefully have this on the May calendar, but that's a separate request for Judge Tolson. So I will amend it to say get an RFP on this for an.
And I will second that friendly amendment. Thank you.
I think we have a suggestion also from our executive director.
My suggestion would be that you direct us to develop, and I'm not totally clear on exactly what the time frame is with which we have to finish this. I don't know if we just have to finish it by the end of the year or if there's something sooner than that. But my suggestion would be that instead of directing us to get an RFP, why don't you direct us to do an RFP, get proposals, and come back in May with a proposal that includes the scope of work, the budget, the fiscal impact, and the recommended company.
That is genuinely what I meant, but
Okay.
I did not. I'm just trying to get us there. It's 5:30. Let's go.
That is genuinely what I wanted to second.
Okay, do we need any kind of like formal amendments, or does everybody understand that the executive director is making a suggestion on how to proceed?
Can the executive director repeat the motion now that it's been amended a couple times?
Yes.
Just for clarity.
Okay, so I'm saying that Governor Couch restated the motion to direct staff to conduct an RFP and bring back a proposal to the May meeting that includes a scope of work, a proposed scope of work, a proposed budget, and a recommendation on the vendor.
Mr. President, there's a chat comment from President-elect Clark.
Yes, and I got some hands up in the room too, but I'll start with the chat. This is from President-elect Dan Clark to everyone. Question regarding the motion on the table. Would the proposed professional staff we contract with be asked to develop a process that was anonymous? That issue didn't seem clear in the current motion by Governor Couch. And
I had intentionally left that vague, as though my preference is anonymous. If we're hiring experts and trusting experts, let's let the experts be experts.
I would suggest that we take a motion on that point and then proceed.
well, let's get some more discussion going here. Governor Dresden, you still have your hand up, so I presume you have something else you want to say. And then I've got Governor Peterson, Governor Siani, Vice President Cicchetti. You're up, Governor Dresden.
Okay. All that buildup. I guess I have a few things to say, but I'll try to keep it quick because I too am ready for the day to be over. On the question of anonymity, I think that I don't know that we need to decide it today. I think that's probably something that we can get some feedback. If we're going to go out to some professionals, I think this is something that they can and should weigh in on. If we had to, I guess I would lean slightly toward not being anonymous, but I don't really have a strong feeling either way. But what I wanted to say, and Governor Pertzer took a lot of the words that I was going to say. He was very articulate on this point, is that I think I really hope that we can create a process that is going to be replicable, and not just so we can have data that can be viewed longitudinally, but so that future boards don't have to do this again. I cannot believe that we are spending this much time. I mean, I don't even want to go down that road, but it just kind of boggles my mind that we have spent so much time on this, and that the Personnel Committee, and frankly, has spent so much time on this. And absolutely, they spent a lot of time developing this. And there's got to be a system that we just do year after year, because that's what we do. And maybe there's some minor tweaks to it, and maybe we check with it's an HR company. But so I'm going to support this motion happily. And I really just hope that we end up with a process that is as simple and efficient as possible, so we don't end up, or the royal we, or however you want to define that, don't end up in this situation again. So that is my fervent hope. Thank you.
I believe we're up to Governor Peterson.
Yeah, this is just a point of clarification. Typically for RFPs, what gets brought back to the group is usually 2 to 4 vendors options. Is that the idea?
I think we can do that. What I had said in my motion was that we would bring back a recommendation, but so we could bring back a recommendation, but allow you to see the other proposals. We could bring back 2, however you all want to do it.
Yeah, no, that'd be fine if you brought out, brought us a couple, and you would, obviously, whichever one you would like best, recommend, and that'd be great. That'd be great. Thank you.
Governor Siani.
I was going to say that I am a fan of this motion in terms of having an outside consultant advise us on a process. I don't have the experience to understand the proper way of doing this, and I want to make sure that what we're doing is within an industry standard and also something we can implement going forward. I agree with Governor Dresden. On the issue of whether we want these to remain anonymous, while I understand that there are reasons for keeping the evaluations anonymous, it is my experience that I've never given nor received an anonymous review. So, in my experience, I have not experienced the type that is anonymous, where I don't know what the comments are that have been given about me, nor do I provide anonymous comments. But then again, I would hope that the process and recommendation we receive from a company that we choose would tell us what they recommend on this issue, rather than us trying to determine what we think is appropriate.
Governor Higginson.
I have a couple of concerns. One is, unlike the private sector, we have a responsibility to members. We're different than a law firm, and we're different than certain other groups, and we are obligated by the terms of Tara's contract to conduct an annual evaluation, and she's obligated to participate in that evaluation. So whatever we do, I think we need to be mindful of that. And secondly, I think if there's too much involvement from the executive director and very little, if any, from the board, it begins to look to members as if we are not really doing our job. It's the only thing we really have to do that we haven't allocated to someone else, which is to evaluate the executive director. I think we should do that. I mean, let's face it, it's a foregone conclusion that most people were going to most likely have many positive things to say. And those that might not have as many things positive to say probably won't fill out the evaluation. So, this is a bit of a useless process, but we are obligated by the contract to do it. So let's at least look like we're being fair. We do have our fiduciary obligations to the members, which mandate that we follow the contractual obligation that we've engaged in. So I want to be mindful of that. And that also brings me to asking if we, who will develop the criteria as that we're going to ask the company to put forth for us, or do we just tell them what in your experience do you think would be a good idea for us, and we get a couple of proposals and then we go from there. I just want to throw that out because otherwise we're back to a problem where we're not being clear with the company about what it is we want, and then they come back with a proposal and some people say, well, that isn't what I had in mind, and what about this and what about that? So for the sake of efficiency, I'm recommending that we consider that. I don't have an answer on how that happens. That's up to the majority, but I do think it's something we should be aware of.
Governor Boyd, followed by Governor Stevens.
Thank you. I'm happy to support the motion on the table, and I don't want to throw a wrench into the machine. However, the Bar Association has existed for a long time, and I would assume that the board has been evaluating the executive director for a long time. And I would assume there was a process for that. So I'm wondering why we're reinventing the wheel at this point, and maybe we just look at the past process before we decide to do a bunch of research and potentially engage an outside company.
Governor Stevens.
Hello, everybody. I'm back. I'm probably going to abstain since I haven't been around for this entire discussion. However, hearing what Governor Higginson just had to say about our obligations, I do believe we're all lawyers here. So the question I would have is if both sides, both parties, meaning us and the executive director, decide to waive or extend that time, I think they can do that. I think we can do that. So I guess executive director, as we're talking about this, maybe it would be helpful for you to let us know where you stand on the term in the contract. But also, as I recall, and maybe you've already talked about this, but I believe you were formally hired as our executive director maybe in February of last year. So your annual time has actually come around. It's not like we are woefully 2 years out. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I'd like clarification on that. But I would like to know where you are in terms of, extending that time to do your evaluation or not.
Would you like to respond?
Yes, I'd like to respond to that. And I had my hand up for a couple other things. So I believe I was hired in January. And yeah, I mean, I think it seems like we're all engaged in a good faith effort to get this done. So I don't have a concern about the timeline that we're following, particularly if we can take action in May. I did want to note that we did have a process that we used for many years, I think with consistency, including an outside consultant for the prior executive director. And I think due to circumstances, that relationship ended. I don't know if it could be resumed or not, but it's certainly something we could look into as we're doing the RFP. I also wanted to add as well, I mean, and I think this is probably implicit and everyone understands this, but I just felt the need to say, since we're talking so much about experts, that of course we do have an in-house expert. However, given that she reports to me, I do think it's appropriate that we use an outside vendor. But I think I would I anticipate that our in-house expert will be the one who's developing the RFP and the criteria. But ultimately, we will be deferring to the outside consultants who do not report to me to develop the tool and make recommendations to you all as to what that tool should look like.
Governor Peterson.
Yeah, I'm fine with the proposal or the motion in front of us. And people can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is what was set forth in terms of what the Board of Governors would be answering is what was developed by the Personnel Committee 2 years ago. And it's also my understanding that what we're going to have Executive Director Nevitt fill out is actually what's been used for years. We did go to the Personnel Committee, and Executive Director Nevitt had some concerns about part of it, and I believe that was changed. So I guess to Governor Boyd's point, what's been proposed is what's been done for years, but people want to go down a different track. I have no problem with that.
Executive Director Nevitt.
I just want to clarify that I think what you're recalling is the tool for the board members and the executive staff. And I do think that that was a tool that was used before. I don't know if it's a tool that was only used the last time or if it was used many years prior. But I think that the self-evaluation tool, that one is brand new. That's not one that we've used before.
Any further discussion? Yes, we are going past the recess thing, but I think I already announced that. So, Governor Higginson.
I just wanted to clarify that in prior years, it's my understanding that the executive director's compensation was based on an evaluation process, and that was why there was an outside counsel, and she did her own self-assessment, which was then used to determine the compensation. But when we went to a 10-year contract for Tara, that changed. And so that didn't really apply anymore because her compensation is set by contractual agreement. So what we did before really doesn't apply now. And that was all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Governor Higginson. Anybody else have their hand up that I missed? I apologize if I missed anybody. I think we have any other hands up. Okay, so ready to vote on the motion? Do you want to hear it again from our Executive Director Secretary?
Might as well.
Why not?
Governor Couch restated his motion to direct the staff to conduct an RFP and bring back a proposal to the board in May that includes a proposed scope of work, proposed budget, and recommended vendor.
And I see I missed one in the chat, so I want to add this. Governor President-elect Clark said, I believe it was only used in 2020. Prior, only the Personnel Committee and the ED did the evaluations. The full BOG would vote in September to approve or disapprove the Personnel Committee's recommendations. So I want to make sure you had that piece of information before you voted. Anybody want to address that, or are they ready to vote? See a lot of hands up, so I think we're ready to vote. Okay, Governor Abel.
Aye.
Governor Adwale.
Aye.
Governor Angelville.
Aye.
Governor Boyd.
Aye.
Governor Clark.
Aye.
Governor Couch.
Aye.
Governor Dresden.
Aye.
Governor Higginson.
No.
Governor McBride. Governor Peterson.
Yes.
Governor Pertzer.
Aye.
Governor Sayani.
Aye.
Governor Stevens, excuse me.
Abstain and please record it.
Governor Williams-Ruth.
Aye.
Did I miss anybody? Okay, I have one. I have 11 yeses, 1 not voting, and 1 abstention. The motion carries. Okay, I think we have a couple items. I just want to remind everybody that we're not doing the creation of committee to explore and advise. That's the presenters have agreed to push that over to May. I think what I'd like to do next is following the science revision of the volunteer vaccination rules at WSBA. I think that's going to have Executive Director Nevitt summarize that. There is some materials in your binder starting at page 522.
Mr. President, would it be possible for us to take this up at another time or maybe tomorrow? I don't want to interrupt if there's no time tomorrow, but I know we're all tired and it's been a long day and that's all.
And I second that, Mr. President. For those of us outside of that room, we have long ways to go, especially those of us working from office, and it's getting late.
I'm interpreting this as a motion to adjourn. My question is, when do you want to reconvene? Tomorrow we meet with the Supreme Court 9 to noon. You want to try starting at 8:30 before the meeting and see if we can squeeze this thing in? That sound reasonable?
That, from my standpoint, that would be fine, or maybe at noon for half an hour, or what have you.
Governor Stevens, you got your hand up.
No, I was just wondering, as we were talking about this, it would seem in any case, we shouldn't leave this meeting to hold it over, since decisions are going to be made by the time we have our next meeting. So somehow or another, we need to take it up.
Okay, former governor, past President Shigetti.
Are we going to lose people though if we do this tomorrow that aren't able to join us? Are we at least one? Governor Boyd, Governor Sayani, are you available tomorrow? Governor Sayani? You're here tomorrow? So are there other people that we're going to lose?
Can I just say, if we did it at noon tomorrow, I would be available to call in, but I couldn't before that.
Can we do that, President Paulson?
Any objection to adjourning now and reconvening at noon with the hope that we'll be done by 12:30 when I disappear?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor raise their virtual or real hand. Anybody abstain? Anybody voting no? I don't see any abstentions or no's. Okay, folks, so we're going to adjourn now so we can all go to dinner. And it's at the Gardener's Restaurant, which is in downtown. I hope you have the address or the directions somewhere. And we're going to start at noon tomorrow, right after our meeting with the Supreme Court. And there's a possibility that they won't want to use all 3 hours of their time, but I guess we'll find out. Thanks, everybody. A lot of information.
Have a good evening.
Tomorrow.